Can I have your attention, please? Shabbat Shalom, everyone. It's now time to start finding your seats for Sabbath services. I'll now hand it over to the next speaker.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. My name is Dara Visual Label Sarah, and I would like to serve you forever as the priestess starting very soon. It's a privilege and honor to present to you the sons and daughters of Israel Label now entering the sanctuary. And now I'd like to turn it over to the great priest in the house of Yahweh.
If y'all remain standing, we'll turn the services over to the Holy Women of Nu, the Queens of the House of Yahweh.
Shalom, everyone. You can be seated. Okay, today we're going to continue on with the Gematria that I have been studying out on. And if I could have my first slide, please. And I did the Holy Women of Nu, the Perfect Helpmeet. And it's from the gematrix.org is the Gematria that I used. And we went over the 3109, which means Yahweh revived. And we know that we have been a part of the work of pastors' work with his donkeys and in restoring the name of the Book of Yahweh, also in restoring the name of the work, which was in 1973. Now, the second number was 2298, and it means first, one, together. And we are proving ourselves as we continue to work in Yahweh's house, bringing forth and standing behind the overseer in his teachings and teaching our children that we are in unity with Yahweh, Yisrayl, and Yeshua. Now, the third number of this Gematria, and this is amazing. This Gematria is the first Gematria that I've ever done that I can use all three numbers to tie into not only the work in these last days, but also it ties us into Yisrael and Yeshua. And the third number is 383, and it means there is, and it's used only as a particle of affirmation. And now, I also wanted to show you this. This is on the Yahweh.com blog under the Sabbath Review. And this was one of the speakers had brought down about the Helpmeet. And it says, a Helpmeet is an apt description because women work on being prepared, including knowing the laws of Yahweh. A righteous Helpmeet is humble, accepts correction, and is valuable to Yahweh. They love Yahweh's laws, his work, and his family. Now that is a perfect description of every single woman that I see sitting here in this sanctuary, plus all of the women that are listening to us over the internet. You and I, we are the perfect helpmeets in these last days because we stand behind the overseer as he brings out and fine-tunes the laws that Yahweh has given us. Now I want to continue on with this 383. And if I have my second slide, now 383 corresponds to 3426. And it is used as a particle of affirmation. And it means there is, thou art, thou can, have, it be, there is. Now if you go to 3426, now this is the Hebrew definition in Strong's, to stand out or exist, or as a copula for the substantive verb 1961, there is. Now, 1961. First, I want to give you a definition of copula. A copula means something that connects or links together. It's a linking verb, and it serves as a connecting link or establishes an identity between a subject and its complement. Now, it also means it's a connecting link between the subject and the predicate of a proposition. Now, if we go to 1961 in the Greek, it's a primitive root, and it compares to 1933. Do we recognize that date, 1933? That's the year that our overseer was conceived. And 1933 means to be. 1961 means come to pass. And that takes me to the scripture, Isaiah 2:3. If I could have the scripture, please. And it will come to pass. Now, this is Isaiah 2:3 in the Book of Yahweh, page 531. You can also go to Micaiah 4:1-4, and you get that second witness of this definition, of this prophecy that is being fulfilled as we sit in this sanctuary today. It will come to pass in the last days that the mountain, the promotion of the house of Yahweh, will be established in the chief of the nations. Now, these numbers, I take these numbers as a way of backing up and giving us an added benefit of understanding what Yahweh is revealing to our overseer of our place in these last days. We, as he says, are the women of new. We are the holy women of new. That means that we not only know the laws, that means we love and live and teach the laws. That is what he means when he calls us his holy women of new. Okay? That is an awesome, awesome description of every single woman that's sitting in here in the sanctuary and every woman that is in the house of Yahweh, whether you be 1 year old or 100 years old. We are the perfect helpmeets in these last days to help bring in the kingdom of Yahweh. And this comes to pass, as I says, it goes to Isaiah 2:3. It will come to pass in the last days. And of course, we know the scripture, I'll paraphrase it, in the last days, the voice of the seventh Malach in the last days will reveal the secrets. And we've already understood and have already had those secrets revealed to us by the overseer. It will come to pass in the last days that the mountain, the promotion of the house of Yahweh will be established. Now that also takes me to another gematria that I had done, and it was the established. But it also brings me to a date of 11/22/1993. This was the date the patent was filed. And when I put 11/22, it comes from 11/29. It means to build, establish, construct, build, also the house of Yahweh. So we are tied definitively with these numbers into the establishment of the house of Yahweh in these last days. That also gave me from the house of Yahweh calendar, and I did a little bit of just an overview of these dates. The HOY calendar was published on 10/31/2015. And it showed the temple brochure, which was printed in 1996. And they all tied together. Hezekiah's prophesied temple patent was filed on 11/22/1993. That was almost 2 months and 2 weeks after the signing of the peace treaty, which was in 9/13/1993. But it was before the Vatican signed the accord with Israel in 12/1993. We were right there in the midst of those signed documents where the overseer fulfilled the prophecy of the temple and also began teaching us to become the holy women of new. And I'll turn it over to the next speaker.
Shabbat Shalom, great saints of Yahweh. Please be seated. Yahweh's peace be with you. How was your week? Well, it was great. Was it interesting? Y'all learned a lot? Great. Okay, so today we're going to cover a few things. I just want to run down real quick and bring it back to our minds just to condition it a little bit. The Book of Yahweh Holy Scriptures are alive. They're just as alive as you are. Just think about that for a little bit. The power of Yahweh is shown in the Scriptures because the Scriptures are the only source of all knowledge. And it's a marvelous work, what Yahweh has done for us and given us this book. It is our inheritance, right? So only in this generation do we have the whole collections of the writings of the prophets and apostles. like, for example, Isaiah did not have any of the apostles' writings. Daniel didn't have Matithiah's writings or Malachiah's writings. So it's only us in the last days generation that we have all the collection of the scriptures that Yahweh pulled together for us. And only in this generation, like, okay, so he gathered it for the last days generation to do this job. Now, let's talk real quick about the number in scripture, because it was discovered by accident by the discoverers, right? And then Yahweh's hidden codes was made possible only because of the computer software, which was invented in the last days generation. So the scriptures had to be gathered, then printed, and then released to the public. Computers had to be invented, softwares had to be made, and then bam, Yahweh's hidden codes was made possible for his house, where the great secrets of Yahweh are only revealed by the mouth of Yahweh, Yahweh's last days anointed witness, Yisrayl Hawkins. So including the Gematria, Yahweh is proving to all those who hear, this is Yahweh's only work. And this is not a God or a Lord's work, but it's Yahweh Almighty, the creator of heaven and earth, who foretold about the last days generation, right? So we got all that in our mind. And he has put in minute details like a history of the house of Yahweh and the information and the prophecies and the preaching that how the work came about. And he's put it in like the Gematria. He's put it in the hidden codes. He's put it in the number in scripture, all these minute details of what he did for this last day's work. Now, and then it's given to the last day's witness to tell us exactly what Yahweh did, right? Okay, so looking real quick, Revelations 11:3, it says that Yahweh gave to his two witnesses to foretell of these events. And then Isaiah 44, he says that the two witnesses are the ones, Jacob and Yisrayl. Now, I want to look over to Revelations 12, verses 16, because I want to lead up to this point, because Yahweh is working with overseer right now, but he's been doing this for forever. In Revelations 12, in verse 6, Yahweh shows us that he prepared the two witnesses for a great work, right? And then looking over to verse 16, it says that the earth helped the woman, and the earth opened her mouth and swallowed up the flood, which the dragon cast out of her mouth. What does that mean? Okay, so first things first. When we think about Oklahoma and the Dust Bowl, Satan was trying to get rid of the two witnesses at that particular time. Now, not only was the persecution against the Jews where they killed all the children, but also that before that time, Yahweh had allowed their parents to come over to a Babylonish land so that Yahweh could prepare them for a work and get them ready. So with that established in our mind, the Dust Bowl was created so that the people who were living in Oklahoma would flee to a different area, and overseer and his family were there established so that she could prepare him for a work in the last days, right? So putting this in the Gematria, it says, who did the earth help, and to whom opened its mouth for? This is absolutely beautiful because because the earth helped the man whose name is the branch, Yisrayl Hawkins, who Yahweh showed in a dream that he's in full control on 5/12. On 5/12. Not only that, but 3072 Yahweh, it means in the Strong's Bible Hub, it's Yahweh Sidkenu, which when you put that in the Gematria, it comes out to 1074, the last day's anointed witness card tag. In 34:15 in Bible Hub, that definition is to quiver. To quiver. I find it absolutely beautiful that 512 is connected with this particular gematria, showing us that he is in full control. Now, quiver, who was hidden in Yahweh's quiver? When we look over to Isaiah chapter 49, verse 2, it says, okay, and he has made my mouth like a sharp sword, in the shadow of his hand he has hidden me and made me a polished shaft, a trained person. Because Yahweh allowed him to be trained in the wilderness in Oklahoma. And in his quiver, he has hidden me. In his quiver. Quiver also means among his workers. Among his workers. And what's absolutely amazing is that in the gematria, who was hidden in Yahweh's quiver, one of the numbers is 2022. Do y'all remember what that number is? It's right there. Mountain promotion. Isaiah 2:2, Micaiah 4:1. So, who is hidden in Yahweh's quiver? The mountain promotion of the house of Yahweh, those who are among the house of Yahweh. And this reminds me of Psalms 91. And it says, he who dwells in the secret place of the Most High will abide under the shadow of the Almighty. Yahweh is absolutely amazing. Yahweh bless your understanding. If you would all please stand, I'll turn it over to the next speaker.
Shabbat Shalom, purple people. Please be seated. Today's date in the world is 7/13, and that's purple. And we are Yahweh's purple people. The title of the speech is A Purple Purpose. Yahweh has given us a purpose to make us perfect teachers, to give us royal positions as kings and queens to guard and keep a holy royal law. In order to achieve our purpose, we've been given a strong leader, as we see in the Gematria. A strong leader is 828, and we know that that's Pastor's birth date. That was given to him by Yahweh. And what makes Pastor strong? What makes him strong is the Elia, the Malachi, 4 verse 5, the laws and the prophets, and that he lives by the every word of Yahweh, and that's what makes us strong also. The next Gematria shows that he's a Yahweh pleaser. And that's 1074. We see 1074, that's his tag number. Whenever you see that, know that Yahweh gave that to him along with the tag number 322 that belongs to his vehicles before the foundations of the earth were laid. And he never loses focus of this. He never loses focus of pleasing Yahweh. So how did he become like this? In another Gematria study I was doing, I put in something like showing and telling all, and it came up with the number 3423, and we'll see that number 4323. And that 34 was the year that the overseer was born. 23 means gathering. He was born gathering. And how was this accomplished? Because his mother, while he was in the womb, was gathering the knowledge of the scriptures for him. So that foundation was laid for him to be the one sent to guide us to achieve Yahweh's purpose for us. Now, please remember what I just told you, what our purpose is and who Yahweh gave us to come to that purpose. In Exodus chapter 15, the children, after they had just been brought out of Egypt, they were rejoicing. It says they were rejoicing as they were led out of Egypt. They were led out of that physical land. In Egypt, they had partaken and probably brought in the teachings of God worship, the ways of the gods. Did they really think they were in bondage? Let's see what Yeshua said in Yachanan 8:33 on page 824. It says, they answered him, "We are Abraham's descendants, and were never in bondage to any man." Now, They just knew that their forefathers had been brought out of Egypt, but yet they said they were never in bondage. Why? Because they created that system that they were in, and they weren't willing to leave it. So were they really in bondage in their own mind? No, it says that they weren't. So I have a gematria, Coptic, meaning Egypt. And Coptic, you can see, has a hidden 666, because when you take that 66 and you times it by 6, you get 396. Now, when Yahweh wanted Moshe to bring them out of Egypt, it wasn't just to be brought out of a physical land. Just like when we're being brought out of Egypt, out of sin now, to come to the great house of Yahweh, Yahweh just doesn't want us to come out of a physical land and be somewhere else and all of a sudden we're going to be his people. He wants us to get Egypt out of our hearts and out of our minds. So were they thankful to be delivered from Egypt? Let's see. Let's see what Acts 7:35 says. This Moshe, whom they rejected, saying, "Who made you a ruler and a judge?" is the one Yahweh sent to be ruler and a deliverer by the hand of the Malach who appeared to him in the bush. Now they didn't get Egypt out of their heart or out of their mind. And in Samuel's days, just 379 years later, after being brought out of Egypt, they still never repented of their God worship. Let's look at the gematria by the hand of the Malach, just as it's written in Acts 7:35. By the hand of the Malach, you can see, is the overseer. The overseer was a busy person even before this generation. So he was there to deliver the people out of bondage, out of Egypt, if they were willing. Let's see the next gematria. It says, "Who brought us out of Egypt?" And you know, sometimes when you ask the overseer a question, he gives you a different answer. Well, the answer is, in 1962, the overseer at the age of 28 went on the radio station for the first time and started bringing the people out of Egypt. And another gematria, he has brought us out of Egypt. And there you go, you see another gematria that belongs to the overseer, 322. He has brought us out of Egypt. He has shown us the way. So let's go back to the gematria that says by the hand of the Malach. That 799 means fire law. It goes to 784, and it represents Yahweh's presence. Yahweh is with the overseer. And it goes to 1881, a royal law, commissioned. And if you remember, we put commissioned in the gematria at one point, and it came to 828. It is the overseer that is commissioned in these last days to bring us out of Egypt. In the Greek, it goes to judge, to join fitly, to collate. And you know, the overseer talked about collating the PWs. Collate means to collect, combine in a proper order. And it goes to one more number, 4862, a resemblance. The overseer resembles Yahweh. He rules as Yahweh rules. His heart is pure and perfect like Yahweh. Now, the overseer can bring a donkey to water, but he will never make that donkey drink. That is up to us, to humble ourselves, to get all of Egypt, all of God worship out of our lives. We didn't come here just to do our own thing. We came here to support the Anointed One in bringing in a kingdom. So my question is, have you gotten, or are you willing to get Egypt out of your heart and mind so you can achieve the purpose that Yahweh has given us, to make us perfect teachers, to give us the position of queens and kings, to guard and keep a holy royal law? Let us turn it over to the next speaker.
Shalom. Please be seated. Have you ever been listening to the overseer and you're sitting on the edge of your seat, just waiting for what he's going to say next to us? And then he says, well, my time is up. Yeah, I know. I've heard those cries out there. So the following Sabbath comes, and you're waiting. I mean, you're not even really waiting because we're just anticipating. We're really excited. We're looking forward to the overseer getting up there on stage because, he doesn't get much time anymore. And then when he gets up there and he starts talking, he's on a totally different subject. And you're like, what? Well, I got a secret. You want to know what it is? You don't want to know? Yes. He continues his sermons in his writings. Let's look at Revelation 11:1, just the first part. And there was given me a reed. The pen, and remember that word reed means the pen of a ready writer or one who's made ready to write. And then look at Isaiah 44:5. And that's speaking of the two witnesses. You have the one who calls himself Jacob, and then you've got the other will subscribe with his hand and write. And this is the witness Yisrayl. In the two witness book on page 10, that word subscribe means to write, record, give an account of Yahweh's laws and prophecies. And yes, ma'am, he does. He usually, on average, writes about 3 letters a week. Head Judge Tana is my witness. She runs to the mailbox to get those letters to bring to me. And from those writings, we get the prophetic word, we get the newsletter, we get the blog letters, and we even get the golden oil because he writes a lot. He writes a lot. If you remember, Matthew 24:14 speaks of the preaching of the message. And then Yachanan Mark 13:10 speaks of the publishing or the writings of the message. And those two go hand in hand, and we need them both in order to get that full measure of oil that we need. In an article entitled, How Are Listening and Reading Related?, researchers found that while listening and reading share many comprehension processes, there are differences in the way the information is processed. Readers often remember more details, while listeners often come away with an overall understanding of the ideas that are presented. So you see, we need both of those. And if we're not taking in these writings of the great overseer, then we are missing out on a wealth of knowledge. And most often, we have an excuse. Well, I don't have enough time. Well, the great overseer says, if I have time to write these letters and then proofread these letters, then we certainly have time to read these letters. Because if we have any idle time, that time could be used in reading his writings. These writings are necessary for us because he can't always bring everything in a sermon. Because if you've noticed, you'll see what he was talking about in his letters. You'll see that. So if we're spending any time on social media, wasting our time on television or whatever, then, that time could be well spent in getting this knowledge and understanding that we need. Because we're robbing ourselves of receiving this great wisdom, this oil that we need. Now, for 20 plus years, I have had the privilege, and I do say it is an honor and a privilege to be able to type the overseer's writings. And praise Yahweh. I'm going to tell you, he never ceases to amaze me in his writings. He is so far advanced in the understanding and the wisdom and the knowledge that Yahweh has given him. And sometimes, I'll be typing and I'm not quite sure what he might be saying, so I'll put my best interpretation in there. And then after I get the proofread letter back, sometimes it will say, it's a sweet little note. Benya, were you drinking? What are you spiking your coffee with? So I'm like, I guess I didn't get that right. But I'm telling you, sisters, we cannot pass up the opportunity to read this message. We really cannot. And you really want to be looking forward to the next newsletter, because that newsletter just wowed me. I'm like, wow. I even wrote a note on there, wow. Hence why I'm up here speaking. But praise God. Anyway, I want to shift gears here a little bit, because in a letter that the overseer wrote this week, he was speaking about the King James Version, being printed here in the United States. And it was printed in 1782 by a man named Robert Aiken, who was a printer from Philadelphia. So I thought, wow, out of curiosity, I put his name into the Gematria. So you're going to see there's a link here between this man and the great overseer and the King James Bible. You notice the number 828. We're all familiar with that number. It's the birth date of our great overseer. And then number 138 means worshiper of Yahweh. Now, Philadelphia, if you recall, Philadelphia was referred to in the lost faith as the seventh era, that era of brotherly love. So there's another connection. Then 1782 means judge. This is a Hebrew. It means judge. Our overseer is a judge. And that's respective to 1781, which also means advocate. And he advocates for Yahweh. He advocates for Yahweh. And then that's also from 1777, which means to rule, one who rules like Yahweh. To strive as at law. He strives to keep the law. He strives to get us to keep the law. Execute judgment. Minister judgment. Plead to cause. His cause is the kingdom of Yahweh. Please plead the cause. Excuse me. I'm going to end here with Isaiah 42, verses 1 and 4. Behold, my servant, whom I uphold, my elect one in whom my soul delights. I have put my spirit upon him. He will bring forth judgment. And then in 4, it says, he has established, no, he will not fail. Get that, he will not fail, nor be discouraged till he has established judgment in the earth, and the isles will wait for his law. Do not pass up the writings of the great overseer. Yahweh bless you. Stand for the next speaker.
Please be seated. Okay, the title of my speech today is Pastor Israel Hawkins is bringing us out of Christianity on 7/13/2019. Pastor Israel Hawkins is bringing us out of Christianity on 7/13/2019. So as we've heard, today is 7/13, which in the Hebrew means purple, right? Now, I want to show you my first slide because this slide shows the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church and its influence. Now you can see on the screen there that we have millions and millions of people that are Catholics. You can see, look at all those numbers. With the M after it, that means millions. So when we're talking about our job in this time period, this is not a small job that we have to bring and convert millions. And we're talking about an organization that we have come up against, this showdown, and we don't come up against this particular organization fighting with spears and warfare like that, but we are coming with sermons that our overseers bringing. And you can see that this is a humongous task that our overseer's taken on. And that's why he needs our help. He doesn't even really need our help, but he's allowing us the opportunity to help him. Let's give it like that, okay? He is allowing us the opportunity to help him. Now, for my second slide on the overhead, we have a quote from Mr. Quigley. And Mr. Quigley, this is a man who was an archbishop from Chicago, and he's Roman Catholic. And here he quotes, here's a quote from him from July 10th, 1915, the Chicago Daily Tribune. And it says, within 20 years, this country is going to rule the world. Now, he was talking about the United States here. Kings and emperors will soon pass away, and the democracy of the United States will take their place. When the United States rules the world, the Catholic Church will rule the world. Nothing can stand against the church. And I'd like to see the politician who would try against the Catholic Church. in Chicago. His reign would be short indeed. Now that is bold. That is bold. Do you see? They know who they are. Now there's one man that is not a politician, and he is going against this organization. And you see, yes, that Yahweh is in complete control. This first beast and the second beast, who is trying to be like that first beast, has infiltrated the whole world. And they know, and they are very confident where they stand. But their ruler knows that her time is very short. And this system, like when Judge Bina was speaking about the overseer's letter, oh, please, please, please do not miss the next one. Because Pastor talks about the garden in a way that we have never known before, and the Satan system that we have never known before. He is so wise that you're going to feel like, wow, I should have known that, because he's prepared us in this way for so many years. But you're still going to smack your head and say, I can't believe I didn't know that. Are you really looking forward to that next letter? I got to bring it from the mailbox to the judge, so I got a little peek. Now, I put in a gematria, and the gematria I put in was the house of Yahweh will expose the evil of the gods. And you see 512? Does everyone know what 512? Yahweh is in full control. And then that Hebrew, that next one is 4470, and it means grieve, sorrow, bitterness. And that's what the God's way brings. Grief, sorrow, and bitterness. But that last number in that gematria, 3072, in the Hebrew, that is Yahweh Zitkanu, which is a 1074 when you put that in, but it means Yahweh is our righteousness. So Yahweh, our righteousness, through our overseer, who is in full control, is going to expose the evil of this beastly system. So these confident archbishops and popes and all these people who think that they know where they stand, Scripture says, be careful, he who thinks he stands. Right? Because pride will bring you down. Pride will bring you down. Now, I put in a gematria, and I have to first tell you a little story about what we do at the office. When the women bring their gematria in, we check it. We check the gematrinator against the gematrix.org to make sure that everything comes out okay. And I had problems with this one. It wasn't coming out. It was coming out different, and so we don't like to bring the gematria if it doesn't work out. But Yahweh, again, was in complete control. So from the Book of Yisrayl, and I really want to show on this overhead right here. The Book of Yisrayl, chapter 13, or chapter 2 of the Book of Yisrayl 13. You've seen it several times, so it should be in your subconscious mind. You just didn't know. Okay, the title of it was When Yahweh Brought the 12 Tribes Out of Egypt, which our Kwana Jabria was bringing that out. He was actually bringing them out of Christianity. Now, this was given on 7/13/2013, so you're talking about a long time ago. But it wasn't time. It wasn't time for Yahweh to bring them out yet. It's time now. But the timing of this particular sermon, I put that in the gematria. So now we're going to go back to the disc, and I want to show you my gematria there, because I put in when Yahweh brought the 12 tribes out of Egypt, he was actually bringing them out of Christianity. You see there we get a 1074, right? And you can see all the numbers. And I put on 713. Now, when I brought it to the gematrix.org, it didn't come out 713. And I was like, I couldn't understand it. I was perplexed. So if you'll show the next one on the disc, because this is what it came out. So you see how it was a little different? How that first number is not a 1074? And I was like, I can't use this gematria because it doesn't work out. But then I want you now we're going to go back to this overhead here, and I want to show you something. On page 11 of this sermon that I put in the gematria, if you add that to what it didn't come out, do you know what it comes to be? 1074. Yahweh He never lets us down. He is in full control. What I didn't realize is the Gematrix.org does not count in the numerical. So when I put the 713, it had to be added back in. But Yahweh added it back in with the page number because he wanted a 1074. He had to show us that this is Yahweh's work through our overseer. We are tagged to come up against this organization. We are not afraid. We stand with our overseer. We stand for Yahweh. We will boldly walk into his kingdom together with that 1074 tag right there, right? So, without any further delay, I'd like everyone to please stand as I turn it over to the priest in the great house of Yahweh.
Reserved for a great kingdom that is yet to be, as we see our high priest Yahshua in Yahweh's prophecies. I will make all of you into my perfect teachers, in whom my greatest wisdom will always abound. You will also be my powerful, perfect reapers. Nations now buried underground, a kingdom of priests I plan to make of you. If you practice all my statutes and my judgments too. Purple is the rank and character of Yahweh's kings and queens, the royal position of Yahweh's great kingdom, yet unseen, reserved for a great kingdom that is yet to be, as we see our high priest Yahshua in Yahweh's prophecies. Yes, the greatest resurrection, as now you see, by your faith that I have proven through all my prophecies. You will have authority with your great loyalty to all the creeping things that creep with loyalty to me. A kingdom of priests I plan to make of you. If you practice all my statutes and my judgments too. Purple is great kingdom yet unseen, reserved for a great kingdom that is yet to be, as we see our high priest Yahshua in Yahweh's prophecies.
I classify you in purple, as loyal and as royal, with pure hearts as transparent gold. So there will never be sin, nor sorrow, because you follow me strictly, with all body and soul.
Purple is the rank and character of Yahweh's kings and queens, the royal position of Yahweh's great kingdom yet unseen, reserved for a great kingdom that is yet to be, as we see our high priest Yahshua in Yahweh's prophecies. This is how we see great Yahshua in Yahweh's prophecies.
Wow. Wow. Praise Yahweh. Shabbat Shalom. At this time, we get to hear from Great Deacon Michael Ossoff.
Shabbat Shalom, great saints of Yahweh. Please be seated. Peace of Yahweh be with each and every one of you. We're going to continue on with the witness Jacob. We're going to do some quick review here. Let's go to the overhead. Okay, so this, once again, that's the house of Yahweh, Odessa. That's the actual building. And remember that the witness Jacob did a great work. His dedicated work, his established work was in Israel. It was not in Odessa because that was not an established work. It was not dedicated to Yahweh, but it was dedicated again in Israel through two brothers from the same womb, himself, JG, and his brother Tex, or Texas James Hawkins. And that work there was the established work, and that is the lampstand, because the lampstand, the lamps on the lampstands were all dedicated works. And what I did is I went back into the codes. There's so much in there that you could just go and go and go, and everything's just all piled in there. There's all kinds of messages. So I wiped it all clean except for the witness Jacob and started searching for more, and more stuff had come out. So quickly, just as a reminder, we had seen that the house of Yahweh is established in Israel. The code showed that Jacob was worthy and honorable. It showed that he was threatened by the rabbis. It also showed that Abelin was invisible, hidden, concealed, secret, chosen, and elect. And then, of course, it showed that Odessa was visible. The word visible crossed Odessa and the word decoy. And that word decoy in the Hebrew and in the translations was to lure a person or animal away from an intended course, which Satan's course we knew was to destroy the work of Yahweh. It showed that he was the sixth Malach, that he dedicated the house of Yahweh with Bill or a bill. Then the word murder and assassination and homicide came up, and then same as Sonny, poison, drug, barium, criminal poisoning, and of course one of the last things that came up was redeemed. Now he went to the Laodiceans, and if you look at the word Laodicea, let's see if I find my paper here. The word Laodicea essentially means a judgment against a people or a person. It comes from in the Hebrew, it's Laos, which means the people, and decay, which means right, justice, the principle, a decision or its execution, custom, right, justice, process of law, judicial hearing against a people, punishment, penalty. And it shows that there was not really that big of a congregation in Odessa, but the work in Israel went for 7 years. It was dedicated. It went on for 7 years, and the witness Jacob and Tex and a number of people were pushing the message. And so it shows that Laodiceans, as Yahweh said in the scriptures, they were lukewarm. They were neither cold nor hot. They also said that, we're in need of nothing. And even when Pastor had met with one of the world leaders, and he was talking about the Palestinians and how showing the peaceful solution of rebuilding the temple, the guy interrupted him, a very high official under Netanyahu, who said, no, you don't understand. You need to be preaching this to them over there on that other side. We're the people of the book. So the arrogance and pure pride that came forth from those people, you can see that that's what the witness Jacob had to fight against. So, and then there's other things that show that Yahweh's house was protected until everything could be moved out here to this protected place on Abel Way in Abelin from Abelin. And then this is when the greatest work and the greatest work to come will be done and started being done at that time. Now, of course, there were other things in the codes and also in showing that, and we'll go back to the overhead, of course, Odessa being on the west side, Abelin being on the east, would throw off somebody thinking that, well, that's the western lamp. Then, of course, a few of the printings of the original Lost Faith showed that Philadelphia was the 6th and Laodicea was the 7th, and we knew that that was incorrect in the translation. And, of course, through much study and research through the great research team of the House of Yahweh, they corrected that. And it's also in the headings of the Book of Yahweh that Laodicea was the 6th and Philadelphia was the 7th. And this came out after the witness Jacob had gone to sleep. So there were lots of things that came out that would elude somebody to think that the witness Jacob was the chosen established work. He was a one sent. He was not the one sent. He was a one sent. He was sent to the people of Israel, to the Jewish people, the Hebrew people in Israel, because Yahweh wanted to offer them salvation. He wanted to offer them peace, and they rejected it. Threatened the life of Yahweh's messenger, and he moved back to the United States and started a house of Yahweh in Odessa. Now let's get into part 2 of the codes, because there's some second witnesses of these things. And if we go over here, all right, so I'm going to go through these rather quickly. All right, so we have, of course, the main was the witness Jacob again. Then, of course, up here again we had Odessa. Then down here we had House of Yahweh. It was a House of Yahweh, but not the established work again. Then over here, decoy or lure, which is what we saw in the last code, Hillel from Abelin. Now that says Abelin, not Abelin. Okay. Then we have the second witness down here. The actual word lure came up. Lure, Satan, Hillel, away, connected to Abelin. Lure Satan, Hillel, away from Abelin. So that came up as the second witness. Then over here, this came up, which just proves the fact that the Laodiceans are the people in Israel. And over here, we have messenger, 6th era to Israel, lukewarm, spew or vomit out. Messenger, 6th era, Israel, lukewarm, spew, or vomit out. So that shows that. Then also we have over here, which was really interesting, is 21. This is Nazareth. Now that's where the witness Jacob had gone to. He was living in a mashav, or a kibbutz, if you will, called Irovat. And when he left there in 81, it just kind of faded from the pages of history. Now they have pictures online of one house that's still there, but everybody left there. Once he was gone, they all left. It's in the northwestern Negev, which is in the Nazareth area. So Nazareth, let's go back to the codes. And then Nazareth, of course, comes up. Then we have, let's see, where's it at? It's hiding from me. 22, witness. Witness is right there. This is great. Prophetic watchman. Prophetic watchman, that's the newsletter that the witness Jacob had done in Israel that was going out all over. It was being distributed everywhere in the land of Israel and given to the people. Okay? Then the last two things to come up, which I thought was really, really, really cool, really neat, was donkey 1074. We have donkey 1074. And I thought about it with the purple today, and this was already done, and I'm almost going to bet the word purple is in there, because the work that he did was that of a pure purple saint of Yahweh. He was a messenger of Yahweh. He was very highly honored. He was redeemed, greatly loved by Yahweh and Yahshua. Yahshua worked very much with him in the work of Yahweh. And of course, him and Pastor ministered together to fight against the onslaught of Satan and trying to destroy the house of Yahweh. They served together and brought forth this house with the establishment of the house of Yahweh to what we have today, the beautiful, great purple house of Yahweh. And we're very blessed to be here. Always remember who we are, what we have ahead of us, and what we have to do and what we will do under Yahweh's authority, under Yahshua's authority, and under the guidance of our great teacher, Yisrayl Hawkins, and the great priests and priestesses of the house of Yahweh also. With that, if you'll all stand. I have the honor to turn it over to a great priest, a dear friend, the great Kohan Benjamin Krause Hawkins.
Shabbat Shalom, great saints of Yahweh. Please be seated. Yahweh's peace be with all of us. Can I have the title slide, please? We're going to do part 2 of last week's sermon about the time and season of calamity, 1962-2019. And remember, Yahweh himself is bringing forth this sign that he's with his house, and we have nothing to fear if we, remain here, overcome, do our work, be faithful to this, faithful, loyal, member of the loyal and royal seed. Can I have my first slide? In 1962, I've gone over this before, but in Daniel 8:13, Daniel said, I heard one saint speaking and another saint said. Now, we're going back to 1962. I showed you last week that, Yahweh saved us from nuclear destruction in 1962. It wasn't time for the season of calamity at that time. Remember, 1962 means calamity. Daniel 8:13 says, Daniel said, I heard one saint speaking. Remember, one saint speaking is 1074, which, by the way, means first fruits. And Pastor said in a sermon back in 2015, right before I gave that 1962 sermon, that fruits came from that work in Eastland, Texas, that him and his brother did on the question and answer show. I heard one saint speaking and another saint said. Now, notice the other saint that said is asking a question. He's not saying something, he's asking a question. That word said is number 559, and it means asking. The word one saint speaking means is 1696, and it means spoke or spokesman. Remember Revelation 11:5 about the spokesman of the two witnesses. And he says, how long will be the vision concerning the daily sacrifice, the setting up of the Lord of heaven, and the surrender of the sanctuary, the host to be trampled underfoot? And then he gives a time period. And Pastor explained this back in 2013 in this following sermon. 13th book of Israel, chapter 14, verse 102. Pastor says, he quotes Daniel 8:13, and he says, what he's asking is, how long before the house of Yahweh is going to be reestablished? How long will it be before you reestablish your work, is what he's saying. Okay, that's the question that's being asked. Notice another saint said is 1062. That's October 62, but it's also 1062 means firstborn older. That's Jacob. He was older. He was the firstborn of the two witnesses. But that number 1062 pinpoints when this was taking place in the Roman month of October of 1962. Can I have my next slide? Pastor called me this morning, and said, hey, we've been getting a lot of letters from people saying, blessed is he who came in the name of Yahweh. I think he said something like 113 countries, or I don't remember how many, maybe 113 letters. But anyway, he said, you need to look into that. So I did. And notice, blessed, this is from Matthew 23:39, where he says, from this moment you will not see me until you say, blessed is he who comes in the name of Yahweh. It's quoted from Psalm 18:26 in the Book of Yahweh, and it says, blessed be he who comes in the name of Yahweh. We have blessed you out of the house of Yahweh. When you put in is he who comes in the name of Yahweh, you see the seventh Malach's tag number 322. But if you type in Psalm 118:26, and yes, it is Psalm, it's not Psalms, there's no S on there, look in your Book of Yahweh. Okay, I get sometimes people, they get a little, they think some things are fudge, but they're not. Psalm 118:26 comes to 1962, you see that? That's when this man came in the authority of Yahweh and began preaching in Eastland, Texas with his brother. Can I have my next slide? Now, along with him, remember, another work was being set up. In 1962, the same week of the Cuban Missile Crisis, the Vatican had Vatican II Council. And I showed this back on 131:15. You can go back and watch the video. I don't know if the video is still up, but it was about how the Roman Catholic Church, in 1962, it said they opened their doors for the world to come, and all the people that had left the church or that had put out of the church to come back and join the church. Okay, and it says, Second Vatican Council, 21st Ecumenical Council of the Roman Church, announced by Pope John XXIII in 59, remember that means Abel, as a means of spiritual renewal for the church and as an occasion for Christians separated from Rome to join in search for reunion, calling her daughters back in 1962. At the same time, when you put that in Gematria, what they had there, notice you get 2211, it means set up. 2211 in Greek means Jupiter, given by Zeus. Now what did the witness ask him? How long will it be till the setting up of the Lord of heaven? Remember that? The Jupiter? The setting up of the Lord of heaven. Notice, Lord of the heavenly habitation to the right there is 1962. Remember, when will the work be reestablished? Strong's 1326 means end, destruction. From 1320, desolation or desolation, waste. Remember, the abomination that brings desolation. Okay, that's what it's talking about here. Greek 1326 means to arouse, to render active, to arise. And that's what the church, the Vatican did. It rose and it called this council. Strong's Hebrew 1188 means Lord of the breach. Baal Perazim, Lord of the breach. Yes, they're the ones that caused the breach. Remember, we're the repairers, the restorers of the breach, but they caused it, okay? Strong's Greek 1188 means right hand or side. You remember Zechariah 3:1 where it says, I saw Yahshua, the high priest, and the Moloch standing before him, and Satan at his right hand to oppose him. You remember that? And it's shown in the nebula. If you look in that nebula that we've shown, it has Satan, the Roman system, at the right hand there, a pastor and our high priest Yahshua, to oppose. That's what they came on the scene for. And it means to sustain, to endure. That's talking to us. Endure. We need to endure this. Notice it's from 2983. 29 is when the Vatican was established in these last days. 83 is the date that the House of Yahweh was established officially. Okay? And it means to prove anything, to make a trial of, to choose and select. Remember, you have to have the two trees, right? So you've got the two trees, the evil tree and the righteous tree, both right here. I'll show you where they set it up in a moment. Can I have my next slide? Now, when you add all those numbers up I just showed you, you get 4725, and it means standing, place, city, region, locality, spot. Talking about this area here. Stood, arise in a hostile sense. To stand, to come on the scene, to establish, to rouse, to stir up, investigate. Investigate. Yes, they investigate the house of Yahweh constantly, right? The enemy investigating. Remember it said on that Prophetic Word magazine, and I'll get more into this later in another sermon, it said, sect under scrutiny. Remember that? Sect under scrutiny. Always under scrutiny, being investigated by the enemy. But he says we need to endure this. 4725 in the Greek means a crown or a garland, a wreath. Now, it's used in two different ways. It's used in speaking of the pagan empires of ancient history which opposed Yahweh, it says, and it gives Revelation 12:3. Also, the end-time coalition led by the anti-Messiah in Revelation 13:1. But it's also used for the infinite majesty and kingship of the Messiah. So you see both races there. Both stood up in 1962. Both stood at the same time. Can I have my next slide? Again, I put in Second Counts, Vatican Council, 21st Ecumenical Council of the Roman Catholic Church that they had in another article. And here's what you get. 3068, Yahweh. Wow, Yahweh, okay. To wash and cleanse from sin, right? That's why Yahweh established his house, to wash and cleanse from sin, to put in order, to order. Remember Isaiah 44:7. Who will set it in order for me? And then 3936 in Greek means to place beside, to stand by, to appear, to prove, to test, in other words. To come up and to stand by, took their stand. Okay, they took their stand in 1962. Remember, you've got to have the evil tree to test the righteous, okay? Strong's Hebrew 656 means to cease, come to an end, disappear, be clean, gone, and fail. That means that they're going to fail, and I'll show you here in a minute more about that. And 656 in Greek means expelled from the congregation, excommunicated outcasts from the synagogue, that would be us, put out of the synagogue. You don't remember Yeshua said they're going to put you out of the synagogues? And remember, now the Roman church is calling them all back in. Can I have my next slide? So where did they establish this diocese that's overseeing and scrutinizing this 29 counties, including Abelin, Odessa, Eastland, and all these 29 counties? It's in San Angelo. Now, why was it chosen? Why did Pope John the 23rd in 1961, on October 16th, the day Kanye Diddy was arrested, by the way, 1016, remember that number, in 1961, established San Angelo as the diocese of the Roman Rite covering these counties. All right, so when you put in that in Gematria, exactly the way it is there, it says to reject, to cast away, to remove far away, and to fail. That means that they're going to fail in their attempts here to destroy the house. But notice in the Greek it means to set up, be present, befall one as of evil, you know, to befall the witness, the evil around him, to befall him, to try to attack him and attack us. Appeared, attacking, stood near, be at hand, be present, assault. That's their job. That's their job, okay, here in this area. Now, why did they choose San Angelo? Go on Wikipedia, and it'll tell you that Pope John the 23rd, his name was Angelo. His worldly name was Angelo, and he saw it on a map, and he said, oh, I think we need to be right there. It's got my name. Okay? Now, remember also later on about those three lawyers down in San Angelo that came against us, the first persecution against the house of Yahweh. You remember Pastor talking about that? All right. So, do we need to be afraid? Go to the next slide, please. Proverbs 28:1 says, the wicked man runs away when no one's chasing him, but the righteous are as bold as a lion. Now, remember Pastor's last sermon about the Egyptians, and listen to what this means. Now it says the righteous are 1074. As bold as a lion, look at these numbers here. Strong's 124 means red, to show blood in the face. That means murder is written on their face. That means that their war is on their face. Remember what Pastor said? I can see it on your face, Jack. Remember that? Strong's Greek 124, Egyptians, Egypt. Second number, 744, a lion. From 738, a lion, a whelp. That's used in Genesis 49:9 about Yada. Remember the lion? And from 717, to gather in the sense of violence. To gather together in the sense of violence. 744 in the Greek, get this, it means ancient, original, that which was from the beginning of old. The beginning, chief, first preaching. Remember the first evil tree? Remember the evil tree in the garden? Beginning, chief, first preaching, principalities, powers. Think of Ephesians 6:13. We fight not only against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers. Actually, that's Ephesians 6:12. And it's from 756, rule beginning from 757 to be first in political rank and power, reign and rule over. Remember, they reign over the kings of the earth, this church, this Roman church. And then the last number, 378, means man of shame or man of Baal, the Lord. And then 378 in Greek means complete, fill, carry out the commands. All right, can I have my next slide? Y'all remember that ship, right? Remember the ship that Pastor just saw? You remember the names of the kingdoms that have already been on this earth? In the Mark of the Beast, Volume 1, Chapter 8, verse 54 to 69, Pastor describes them. First you had Egypt. Remember he said Egypt was the first world-ruling kingdom. Then you had Assyria, Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, and Rome. Put them all in Gematria. You see the number on that ship? Okay, that's who this ship represents, okay? It's these kingdoms. It's this Roman Empire. Now it's finally come to the Roman Empire, which, by the way, they're going to try to resurrect this Roman Empire, and they're using global warming as a decoy, okay, or as an excuse to try to do it, and we'll get into that later, too. So, a warship, Admiral Gorshkov, 454. The first number is 3482. It's Israel. Yisrayl. Remember, he's the one that saw it, but he's also the one they're coming against. Now, are you not the seed of Israel? All of us here? So they're coming against us all, okay? 3482 in the Greek means given of Yahweh. It's that word Nathania, given of Yahweh. Yes, Yisrael was given by Yahweh to us as a gift, right? The second number, 2724, means to desolate, waste. From 2717, decay, be laid waste, desolate, kill, destroy, lay waste, make waste, depopulated. Remember their plans to depopulate this earth? And why did that ship appear right after the last 3.5 years was announced right up here on 610? Well, you'll find out. Yahweh's going to show you. It's going to be very clear. Strong's Greek 2724 means an accusation, a charge, a complaint, a criminal charge. Now, we haven't heard of that before, right? And it's from 2725, a prosecutor, accuser, against one in the assembly, a complainant at law, especially Satan, the accuser, okay? Because remember, that's who this ship represents. Strong's Hebrew 454, that's the number on the ship. It means, toward Yahweh are my eyes. Yes, toward Yahweh, he's scrutinizing, he's investigating, he's looking for every little thing. She's looking for every little thing that she can try to come up with to destroy this work. But you know what? I think she's given up. Now, she knows she can't destroy this work. She hasn't been able to do it, right? So now she's going to try to destroy the earth and the heavens that govern the earth because she can't touch us. Have you noticed that? By the way, Pastor told me that. I don't know anything outside of what the man says, okay? All right, so Strong's Greek 454 means folly, foolishness, irrational behavior, mindless actions, lack of sense which easily degenerates into a state of extreme anger that suggests an incapacity to use one's mind, extreme fury, great rage. You see that in this ship right here, okay? There's extreme fury and rage and anger, and they're getting ready to take it out on some people, okay? They won't be able to touch us, but they will destroy this earth and to a great extent. Can I have my next slide? When you add up all those numbers I just gave you, look what you get. 6660. You can drop the 0 off that, but you can also look at 6660, and it means a lying in wait, design. To lie in wait, to lay waste, destroy, hunt, chase, desolate, a malicious purpose, a sinister design. Remember, Psalms 10:2 says, the wicked in their pride pursues and persecutes the poor. May they be caught in the schemes they have devised. Notice what you get when you put that in Gematria. The wicked pursues and persecutes the poor, 454, that's the number on that ship. That's who's pursuing us. 2805 means plan, scheme, cunning, devises, plot, or contrive in a malicious sense. May they be caught in their schemes they have devised. Do you see the number again, 454? And it means 3707 means anger, provoke to anger, be vexed or angry, to demoralize, be wroth, raged, have sorrow. Can I have my next slide? I'm going to have to stop after this one here, but you know, we'll get to the rest of this, because you're going to have to see that you're going to have to trust in Yahweh, put your whole trust in Yahweh. It says, yes, the truth is suppressed. This is Isaiah 59:15. Yes, truth is suppressed, and he who departs from evil makes himself a prey. Okay, we make ourselves a prey to them from departing from evil. Yahweh saw this, and it displeased him. There was no justice in the last days. Notice, 1515 is the number you get, and it means to hide, lurker, a lurker, somebody lurking, you know, waiting to attack. And who would that be? You see that lion there? The lion that lies in wait? 1515 in Greek means peace, quiet, rest, peace of mind, undisturbed, unity, safety, security, prosperity, the Messiah's peace. That's right. They're lurking, and they're trying to destroy us. But is anybody here running or anything? Y'all running? Y'all feel pretty safe and secure and at peace, right? Are you worried about it? No, you shouldn't be, because Yahweh's fully on our side. Okay, Yahweh is protecting this work. I got to stop there. But we'll pick up Yahweh willing next time, and it's going to blow your mind. I'll just tell you, be reading Isaiah 31 that was written in 713 BY. Be reading that this week before the next sermon. And at this time, if you'd all please stand. It's my great honor and opportunity to turn it over to the great Kohan, Ilya Hawkins.
Shalom, everyone. Please be seated. The peace of Yahweh be with each and every one of you. And once again in the news, you're going to see a common theme that's always taking place, where pastor brings out what needs to be done and what should be done, and mankind wants to go a different way. They want to believe lies. And remember what Yochanan 8:44 said, because it plays a lot into the news, where we were told that, you know, these lies and this murder, it says, you are of your teacher who is Satan the devil. And she did this from the beginning. Yes, she murdered her own children through deception, by lying to them, and they became the gods of this world. But this is the line that we see. And it can be something that seems so simple, but then it's so dramatic. And in Florida, they show how they're having a massive algae bloom in the waters, and it is totally destroying the waters. They're calling for an emergency, a state of emergency. They're saying they don't know what to do. And then they turn right around and say that it's coming from commercial farming. It's the runoff from commercial farming. It's the ingredients, the bacteria that's put in. Once it gets flushed out into the water and then it's dispersed, the sun causes it to grow. And when you hear about this algae, you think, oh, that's not that big of a deal. But watch when it's in the water. You can literally pick it up with your hands, and it's a film that coats a lot of water. It's not a small thing. It's even to the point Mississippi had to shut down all of their beaches, so no vacations in Mississippi because of the algae. And they'll talk about how toxic it is. But once again, they're offering $10 million to anyone that can offer a solution. Could you imagine what we could do with our 4- and 5-year-olds? $10 million could be made just by listening to one man. And that could be fixed. For free, really. Not even asking money, for free. And then over in the Middle East, in and around the great river Euphrates, remember, we always have this war that we see building up, and it becomes kind of, you hear about it, and it's almost like it's every day, but it's building up. It's never just staying at a level. It's always building toward this great nuclear burning, as Isaiah spoke about. But we see that Netanyahu, once again, threatening Iran with F-35s and pushing and taunting Iran, saying, we have the ability to attack you. Iran returning replies to the other signatories. Remember this nuclear agreement. The other signatories are those who were involved in the agreement outside the United States, saying that they will give the other signatories 1 week, and that ends second day, this coming second day, or 7/15, the Roman month of 7 and the 15th day. They will give them 1 week to come up with something to satisfy Iran. And Iran has said that you're going to need to make sure all of these sanctions are lifted from us. Now, these sanctions, once again, remember what was in Revelations. Those who don't agree with this beast cannot buy, sell, nor trade. And that's what Iran's being put under. But China and Russia have stood up and said, we will stand behind Iran. We will help Iran. And remember what Malachi Martin brought about China and Russia, this division that would take place, everybody vying for this top spot. And don't forget how China and Russia is also seeking to establish their own payment system, as we showed last week in the news. And then the UK, of course, they said that they need to send a second warship. So now you have the United States has warships over in the Middle East, in the Gulf region. And now you have the UK, who now has 2 warships over in the Gulf region. And, of course, they're saying they're there to protect ships from Iranian attacks. Even though there's absolutely no proof that Iran has attacked any ships, they're over there to protect them from Iranian attacks. And once again, as we started out with this being the teacher of lies, and of course these lies being deceptive, being a liar and a murderer from the beginning, and whatever it is she wants you to do, you will do. Well, they go into the news and they show the first tool of war is lying. You've got to get the people's emotion going. You got to get them behind. And think about what the house of Yahweh has been through for so many years. Lying, deception, people saying things that everyone here knows is not true, even to the point where those of us that have businesses, customers come in the store and they say, you're not as crazy and as goofy as they say y'all are. What you say actually makes sense. Yeah, it's always made sense. It's the theatricals that they put out there that they try to deceive with. But this line to the point where Ron Paul says the truth is considered treason, where if you tell the truth because it's in opposition against this other tree, this ruling system. And you'll see the U.S. Secretary of State, this is very interesting. Of course, remember, he's supposed to be the chief diplomat. He is the one that represents the president. That is supposed to be the top guy, and you send him to do things. Well, remember, he used to be over the CIA. And he's in a forum where he's in an auditorium, and he's bragging about, when I was in the CIA, we lied, we cheated, we stole. That's what we did. We had classes on that. We taught how to do that. And he's bragging about it. He's laughing about it. And then you have Ben Carson, and he's on President Trump's staff. And, of course, he told his life story. And then there's people that know nothing about his life and relate this to Pastor, who's told his life story. And then people who have no idea about what occurred in this man's life, they were not there. They call him a liar. They make up other things, and they publish this. And he's even addressing his situation, which is just like Pastor's, to where they try to make it sound like Pastor doesn't even know how old his own brother was, even though the state of Texas agrees with Pastor about how old his brother was. These are the things we see. But it's lying that takes place where it looks like a man has done something wrong, even though he hasn't. And then you see Assange, Julian Assange, and this is just an example of a reporter who exposed military crimes. He exposed what was supposed to be war crimes, and he got it through a computer, through a source that was in the military, and he published it for everyone to see. And what was the first thing they charged him with or wanted to charge him with before these military crimes so they could get their hands on him? Well, they said, well, you assaulted this woman over in this country. And even the woman herself says, well, it really didn't occur, but I was kind of pushed to say that. But now they're wanting to sentence this man to 175 years in prison for exposing military crimes, for exposing murder. And watch the story. And the very last one that we show, write down 1 Yochanan 5:19. It is very important that you remember this. 1 Yochanan 5:19. And of course it says, we know to whom we belong. We belong to Yahweh. and that the whole world is under the control of the gods. And that's exactly what Revelation 12:9 tells us, because Satan is the beginning chief of this, and she deceived the whole world. But the United States has commissioned a new program, and it's called the Commission of Unalienable Rights. So the Commission of Unalienable Rights. And what it is, the United States has decided they will now, on a global scale, decide what is and what is not a human right violation. Now, they're saying that this commission will be governed by what is known as natural law, or as also known as the God-given rights. And the head of this new commission will be Mary Ann Glendon. And if she's not familiar with you, she used to be the ambassador to the Vatican. She was under President George W. Bush. She was the ambassador to the Vatican. But watch how it's said, how it's worded. And there should be no doubt in anyone's mind, as Pastor's been bringing about this two-horned beast, let us be like the first beast. Let us serve. Let us teach their way. After you see that, there should be no doubt in anyone's mind what's taking place in these last days. And Yisrayl Hawkins has been right since 1934. And at this time, if we could please go ahead and play the news.
Pay close attention. The news you're about to see is fulfilling Bible prophecy.
Welcome to another edition of YPN News, bringing you the news that relates to Bible prophecy and foretold by Yisrayl Hawkins. Well, in the news this week, we're going to talk about the co-founder of WikiLeaks, Julian Assange, and the U.S.'s extradition attempt there. We'll talk about his trial and the details surrounding it. Also, the Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, admitting to some, you could say, some immoral character, lying, cheating, and stealing. We'll have those details from his own mouth. And also a little bit more on the Iran nuclear deal and the latest moves on some of the countries surrounding it and the new deadline that has been proposed on making changes or what's going to be done after this particular date. So all these and many more, but first, a new type of forecast has become increasingly important to boaters and swimmers on America's lakes and rivers this summer, and it isn't the weather forecast, it's the water forecast. Now, an outbreak of toxic algae caused by flooding rains, high temperatures, and man-made pollutants is choking many lakes and rivers in the country this summer. Now, exposure to the algae can cause sore throats, nausea, and multiple other health issues.
In Florida, it has gotten so bad that lawmakers there are asking the governor to declare a state of emergency for the aquatic lifeblood of southern Florida, Lake Okeechobee. What could once be described as picture-perfect, pristine waters are now overgrown with slimy, toxic green algae.
Well, Chris Whitman's been fishing southwest Florida for his entire life. In a CBS Evening News interview, he said, "It's not looking good for the future. I've canceled my trips the last few weeks because of this issue, and I'm not on the water as much as I once was."
While this isn't the first year, Florida has experienced the green menace. It began to bloom much earlier, indicating it could be the worst summer yet. The problem began when the Army Corps of Engineers released millions of gallons of water from the lake to relieve pressure on its dam. However, the water was full of chemicals and nutrients, much of which come from runoff of commercial agriculture and sprawling development.
So all that mixes in there, and it actually makes the bacteria just come forth extremely fast.
Yeah, and I would think it would be more concentrated because there's a less amount of water to disperse it. Couple that with the heat, and you've got a nice boiling pot of catastrophe.
Well, when the mix bakes in the summer sun, the blue-green algae population explodes. Now, one biologist, John Cassani, has been collecting samples and warning about the health hazards. He says the toxins they produce are incredibly potent, causing not only external problems like skin rashes, but hindering organs like the liver. Now, not only does it impact people's health, it's killing wildlife and impacting waterfront businesses.
I bet. Captain Chris Whitman has lost $20,000 in canceled trips so far this summer. He says it's going to take a lot of effort and hard work and time to fix the problem, but he believes it is fixable. While the federal government and the state have approved a $1.6 billion plan to clean and restore some of the lake waters, no one knows what to do with it.
Well, the private sector is offering a $10 million reward to anyone who comes up with the best plan to fix the problem in there, which now covers 90% of Lake Okeechobee. And this is just one example of what's taking place in many of the coastal states. Just this week, Mississippi closed all 21 of its Gulf Coast beaches to swimmers due to toxic algae bloom. And people there are being told not to eat any fish caught in the area.
That must show how much of a money generator that lake brings in when the private sector is offering $10 million for a solution. Well, Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, is now warning Iran that his country's squadron of F-35 jets can reach anywhere in the Middle East and strike, if necessary, at any moment. While the jets could not reach Iran, whose border is over 1,100 miles away, they do have the capability to refuel in midair, thus making it possible to reach Tehran if they so desire.
While on tour of one of Israel's Air Force bases, the Prime Minister told reporters Iran has been lately threatening to destroy Israel. It should remember that these planes, referring to the ones behind him there, the F-35s, can go anywhere in the Middle East to Iran as well as to Syria.
Well, Netanyahu was boasting of Israel's air capabilities, and an emergency meeting was taking place at the UN with the Board of Governors who were concerned with Iran exceeding the amount of enriched uranium they had agreed upon for their storehouse, which was supposed to not exceed a level of 3.6%, according to the JPCOA.
So now the question is, what will be the next move for the international community? Well, in an interview with Dr. Eldad Pardo, an Iranian affairs specialist at the Hebrew University in Jerusalem, he claimed the U.S. strategy of sanctions was the way to go, and so far has worked very well when it comes to Iran. And that's what we talked about so much, is that strategy of putting all these sanctions on Iran and trying to strangle their economy a little bit in order for them to stop that enriching the uranium.
Well, Dr. Pedro stated that they have seen the economic situation in Iran is extremely bad and it's getting worse, and the Iranians so far are trying to give themselves a show of challenging this by either minor terrorist attacks or by gradually changing the rules of engagement with JCPOA, which, according to their version, they're allowed to. Well, Dr. Pedro is expecting there to be more behind-the-scenes negotiations that will lead to some sort of conclusion.
Well, a few weeks earlier, U.S. Senator Lindsey Graham stated that America would do whatever necessary to stop Iran from obtaining nuclear weapons. Now, the U.S. also knows that Israel is in full agreement and will aid in preventing such a thing from taking place.
When asked if he thought Israel was gearing up for a possible military strike, Dr. Pedro said the entire nuclear deal and all the system that the Iranians have built is directed for this. If in case the world doesn't reach an agreement that is binding and forceful with Iran, then I guess that some countries will have to act in a kind of irregular way.
Well, speaking of the JCPOA, Tehran has granted to the other signatories of the Iran nuclear deal a one-week extension. Now, this coming after the presidents of Iran and France held an hour-long phone call in order to, quote, explore by July 15th the conditions for the resumption of dialogue between all parties. Now, the French President Macron was not reassured, as he stated that he feared the risk of a further weakening of the agreement and of the consequences that would necessarily follow.
Iran's President Hassan Rouhani has said that Iran has honored its end of the agreement and insisted lifting all sanctions was the only acceptable course of action. Of course, analysts are saying Tehran has already shown its willingness to engage in diplomacy.
Well, many believe Washington's sanctions are illegal and designed at creating instability inside Iran. Now, China and Russia have kept their word and vowed to protect their ties to Iran. Now, European signatories have come under criticism for their inaction and agreement to the illegal sanctions.
France is known to be the West's most skilled diplomat, but with less than a week, the negotiating will have to be superb. The U.S. Pulling out of the JCPOA treaty has put the shipping lanes of the world's oil supply in the crosshairs of Washington.
And that deadline, Katana, of July 15th, not real far off at all, so we're not going to have to wait too long to see what is going to take place there.
That's right.
Well, our field correspondent Larry McGee has been covering several stories for us, including the UK's latest move to send another warship to the much contested area, the Straits of Hormuz. Larry, what are the details here? What is the UK doing, or what do they hope to accomplish here in sending this next warship there? I know they're a close ally to the U.S., but what is the strategy behind this move?
If America is prepared to brawl, then Mother Britain will ball her fist too. In case the various nations of the Mideast have forgotten this fact, the UK recently deployed a rotation of its warships to patrol the Gulf to maintain what they say is a continuous maritime security presence in the region. This follows behind a recent incident where Tehran is reported to have launched an attempt to seize a British oil tanker in retaliation for its own ship, which was seized last week due to U.S. demands. There is a very loud clamor and demand for war that has been building among the world's religions and nations for years. But who does war really benefit? Reporter Mike Sanchez sought to answer that question recently. Here's a look at his work.
In the early 2000s, I was a young correspondent and a news presenter at NBC in New York. It was working, well, my very first network assignment and job, when suddenly the Bush administration began lying us into a war with Iraq, lying us into a war with Iraq, lying us into a war with Iraq. I kind of knew it was a lie right away. But at the time, Fox News was our major competitor, and between them and, talk show guys like Rush Limbaugh, everyone was afraid of questioning the war for fear of being called unpatriotic. Already under the Fox barrage of un-American accusations, NBC corporate, the guys in the suits and the white shirts, they were already feeling the heat, and they redirected that heat over to us, the journalists, the writers, the preparers of this stuff. It was a pretty simple message that they seemed to be sending down to us. If you want to keep your job here at NBC, you kind of got to be pro-war. I could have said at the time that I was young and stupid, but I wasn't. I should have known better. I should have pushed back. I should have told the truth, even if it meant that I lost my job, which I eventually did anyway. We're not going to let that happen again. I'm determined. We're committed as journalists and as Americans to call our country out if they try to lie us into another war.
On that subject, ex-presidential candidate and famed whistleblower Ron Paul is being very candid about the creation and function of popular social media platforms like Twitter. The former congressman says the networks originated with a lot of government assistance, and their purpose is to gather information for agencies like the NSA. Mr. Paul says, in an empire of lies, the truth is treason. And so the problem, as he describes it, is that large portions of the population have become dependent on various social media platforms for their information, and these networks have an interest, due to their relationship with the government, to suppress any voice that challenges the status quo. The former congressman believes that these issues have constitutional significance, particularly the First Amendment, which he says was created to provide an opportunity to lawfully challenge the government. For the sake of preserving freedom of speech and the American tradition of political dissent and debate which stems from it, Mr. Paul is hoping that technology can stay ahead of things and continue to furnish alternative, unentangled, and unbeholden platforms for expression. Though America has expressed a willingness to talk with Tehran, information reportedly coming from the UN indicates that the U.S. is through with words and is planning a massive attack on Iran's nuclear facilities. Reputed war hawk and Secretary of State Mike Pompeo is said to be behind the push to make it all occur and is reported to have recently traveled to Florida to meet with U.S. generals to talk strategy. The secretary is said to be receiving cover and a pass from the media, who rarely report anything negative on the official, but there is video now making the rounds where he is seen and heard admitted openly to lying, cheating, and stealing during his time as director of the CIA. The former director delivered the comment with a chuckle has been unnerving for many, who are now questioning how anyone can be certain that the present secretary's comments on the need to attack Iran are true. Presidential candidate Ben Carson has issues with the truthfulness of the American media. Dr. Carson believes that details concerning his life are being deliberately misreported and distributed to the public by reporters who he says are doing shabby investigations. The House Secretary pointed out to journalists recently that the media is the only business that is constitutionally protected. Dr. Carson says there is a reason for that, and that trust has been granted them and should be earned. For YPN News, I'm Larry McGee. Katan Jeff, back to you.
Well, Mr. Carson is absolutely right. The media is entrusted with that freedom of speech, and sometimes it does seem like, as we've seen in many times in the past, they've crossed that line, even falsifying information that went out to the public, thereby ruining a person's reputation. So let's hope that everyone gets on the kind of same page in bringing forth nothing but the truth.
Right, and that false information can easily sway someone's mind and their thinking regarding a person or a country.
The media is very powerful, and that's what people use to make their decisions. They're almost their everyday decisions, but especially when they elect leaders to office. Well, U.S. prosecutors have made a formal request to the U.K. for the extradition of co-founder of WikiLeaks, Julian Assange. And according to WikiLeaks editor-in-chief, the U.S. Department of Defense plans to present its case as to why they want the extradition to take place. So far, there are 17 counts of spying after publishing classified military and diplomatic documents by the website, as well as one count of conspiracy to try to hack a government computer.
Well, if he's found guilty of those charges, he could spend up to 175 years in prison, which is effectively a life sentence. Now, WikiLeaks editor-in-chief said of the case, "I don't believe that we are going to win this with legal arguments. There's no chance that Julian will get a fair trial here in the UK or in the US, of course, unless there's a change of reporting that people actually start speaking out." We're not talking about a prosecution, we're talking about a persecution.
Well, Assange is currently serving a 50-week prison sentence in the Belmarsh High Security Prison because he skipped bail back in 2012. Julian's father, John Shipton, said of his son's possible extradition, he said extraterritorial actions against someone who isn't even a citizen of the United States, he said, all journalists should be concerned. Julian is an icon for what has happened and what will happen to all journalists across the Western world.
Well, in April, Assange was forcibly removed from the Ecuadorian embassy, where he sought asylum for around 7 years following the fact that accusations of sexual assault by Sweden, which he denies and said facilitated his extradition to Sweden, then to the U.S. from there. Now, the U.S. has been pursuing the WikiLeaks co-founder since the publishing of classified documents that may show possible war crimes committed by the U.S. soldiers in Iraq.
Well, Mike Pompeo announced the Commission of Unalienable Rights, a commission which is set to determine what is and what is not a human rights violation. Pompeo said in a statement announcing the commission, he said, "It's sad that after 70 years of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, gross violations continue throughout the world, sometimes in the name of human rights. International institutions designed and built to protect human rights have drifted from their original mission."
In an interview with RT, NRS correspondent Michelle Greenstein said, "Some might say that it's ironic that the U.S. Secretary of State brought up the fact that human rights violations are done in the name of human rights, because it said that that's what the U.S. has done. Now, in this new commission's charter that he just created, that was posted on the Federal Register in May, actually made no mention of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and it said invoked natural law, which implicitly implies something about God-given rights and actually challenges man-made laws.
Interesting. Natural law has been invoked by religious opponents against same-sex marriage in the past. So many are saying that he, referring to Pompeo, seems to be making a faith-based determination using the state as an apparatus. Well, natural law was something that was established by St. Thomas Aquinas called La Naturale, which means that all the laws given to man by God, and that we have to use those laws and then enforce them on a national or global standpoint.
Well, the head of this new commission is Marianne Glendon, who is the U.S. ambassador to the Vatican. Now, this is definitely the next chapter of what's going on with this administration, seeing that we've already pulled out of the UN's Human Rights Council that actually investigates human rights abuse because the U.S. didn't like what it said about Israel. Now, as a note, Pompeo is also associated with Christianity.
Interesting. And most of the leaders in pretty much all administrations have some association or affiliation with some type of religion. And it's interesting to note that, you know, a lot of what the U.S. is doing is kind of tied and backed by the Roman Catholic Church. In fact, some of the very things that Yisrayl Hawkins has been bringing out and showing some of the details in Revelation shows that this administration, this government, this country would actually imitate and do a lot of the things that the first governmental setup that was led by the Catholic Church did as well. And so we're seeing a lot of those similarities take place. In fact, you know, the thing that with the human rights violation, we see that taking place, and a lot of countries are kind of up in arms because, hey, they're saying the United States are violating human rights too, and they're going to come in and prosecute us. Who's to say what's right and wrong? Well, Pompeo is saying we're going to determine what's right or wrong with this unalienable human rights thing. So I guess we'll see how that plays out, but we definitely know that one thing that mankind is ensured is the right to live in peace and safety, and the only way they can do that, according to Yisrayl Hawkins and the House of Yahweh, is by following the laws that are written in the Holy Scriptures. To find out more about those laws and how you and your family can live in peace, contact the House of Yahweh, and when you do, don't forget to request your free copy of the monthly newsletter and the prophetic word. Here's how.
Well, to contact the House of Yahweh, you can write them at the House of Yahweh, P.O. Box 2498, Abilene, Texas 79604. You can call them at 1-800-613-9494. Visit them on any of their websites, Yahweh.com, YisraelHawkins.com, or Yahweh'sBranch.com. You can also visit our website by going to YPNnews.com. If you would like to email the House of Yahweh, you can do so by emailing info@Yahweh.com. For any international calls, you can call the number that's up on your screen now. And once again, if you have not checked out the Yisrael Says program or the Ask Yisrael program, by going to YisraelSays.com and AskYisrael.com, please do so. They're absolutely free. You can type in a search and find pages and pages of scriptural information guaranteed to broaden and enlighten your understanding of any scriptural topic.
Well, don't go anywhere. Up next, the only person that we know of anyway on the face of the earth that is teaching about true human rights and how everyone can exist in peace and safety, Yisrayl Hawkins. For all of us here at YPN News, I'm Katan Alexander.
And I'm Jeffrey Heimerman.
Thank you for watching.
At this time, if everybody would please stand, I hope everyone noticed when you seen Ben Carson, he said that the press has been granted this belief that you should believe them, but he said trust must be earned. That is a direct quote from the Moral Excellence in the Workplace Manual of the Peaceful Solution, saying that respect must be freely given, but trust must be earned. And in the house of Yahweh, Yahweh has earned everyone's trust who will believe. And at this time, I would like to present the greatest teacher in the world, the great Kahan Yisrayl, Abel Hawkins.
Wow, hey, we got a crowd. Where y'all come from? Oh, this is beautiful. Yahweh, look at it. Praise Yahweh. Be seated. The peace of Yahweh be with each and every one of you. The news is looking great, just like prophecy said it would. What the house of Yahweh is doing is looking even greater. Right now it looks like we have about 209,000 people viewing. And this is 713 in purple. Yahweh's people, purple, that's pure people. A few comments, we're getting a lot of comments, and they were answered today now at the very beginning by the great Kohan Benjamin Krause Hawkins. But they're asking about the blessing coming from the house of Yahweh, or where is it coming from? Where do we be blessed? Who is the person? And so forth. Well, that was all answered scripturally there. That's the number, by the way, 209,000 over. Let's see. This is what's fantastic. The PDF, that's portable documents formats. The PDF is a report of the countries we are reaching with I better not tell you this tell you in private, but we're reaching way more countries than anyone else in the world except Donald Trump. India has the most interest with 3,771 listening to the broadcast right now. India. It gets better too. The U.S. U.S. had other countries with high interest in the last month are the Vatican. Praise Yahweh. Indonesia, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Iran. If you can look right here, I have 13 pages of these countries. These are all countries, if I can get them where I can turn them, where you can see them turn. And it goes, see it top to bottom, 13 pages of countries, back to back. So the prophecies that Yeshua gave in Matthew 24:14, they are being fulfilled right now. with this message of the kingdom. The kingdom I'm talking about is the same one he talked about, Matthew 6:33. Let's see, the feast. You've only got 3 months. You got this, we're in Melchizedek. If you don't have a sacred calendar, all you have to do is ask, and we'll get one coming your way. But this month is Melchizedek. 10, we got Abraham, then Isaac, and Jacob. So we got 3 months and 5 days. I believe that is right. 3 months and 5 days, I think. You better start getting ready. I told Rebecca this morning to get us she better start telling everybody the communications may get shut off. Because we're doing our job. So it's not like we haven't done our job and the people, but it's up to the people out there that are listening to me to find another way of communications in case the one they have, internet, telephone, or whatever, gets shut off. But it's really time for you to start looking for a way to get to the protected place. The protected place is just that. It's the only prophesied protected place on earth. Now, Trump is doing his job, doing it well. The Trump Temple coin, I don't know if you've heard about that yet. Trump Temple coin, here it is. Trump Temple coin. It's a little bit dark, but there you go. That's better. It's very interesting. It's Trump Temple coins that changed the world, now in silver. 15 months after Trump's historic declaration recognizing Jerusalem as Israel's capital, silver coins minted in honor of the bold move. He transferred the American embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, and following this historic event, the Trump Temple coins are minted. All who support Israel, the Holy Temple, and Trump's declaration, the main ideal conveyed by these coins is that President Trump is initiating a prophetic process that will eventually facilitate, when the time comes, the rebuilding of the third temple. Strange they would be talking about that just when the prophecy said they would. This coming new moon, I know we've made the announcement, but I'd like for you to know again, be thinking about it. Let's see, I've got something here. Yes. Black Thunder is the name of it, full moon. Get ready for the massive energy shift. It says on July 16th, 2019, you can't get too much prayer in. You can't get too much study in. We're told to redeem our time. Try to do and say things. Adjust your conversations. Visiting, you can say a lot of things that get you in trouble with Yahweh. You can support a joke, or you can support righteousness too. But most of the time, it's stupidity, and it's a waste of time. It's like picking at a telephone all the time. With nothing that you get back from it. It's like talking on the phone. It's like watching television. It's just a waste of time, or passing time, as they call it. Why would you want to pass time? Why wouldn't you want to grab hold And all you'd have to do is have your Book of Yisrayl handy. That's where you're getting all this truth, is from that Book of Yisrayl. And as this great Kohana Dina brought out this morning, this is magnificent for everyone. I don't think I'd speak too loud if I were saying I would rather go work than have a woman teach me. If Joshua is hearing you, there'll be a record placed by your name to ask you why you're running Nora down. Why are you trying to belittle Nora with your high and mighty attitude? This is not making points with Yahweh. The knowledge that was brought out by these women this morning was fantastic. I'm going to take it and go over it again. And I've already been over it, but I'm going to take it and go over it again because there's a lot of things there I'm going to use. It's beautiful what they're bringing out. If your mother had taught you properly, of course, your mother can only teach you what she knows. And what she knows is the experience that she got from childhood up until now. So babies being born now should be taught the Book of Yahweh before they're ever born. You can do that with the Book of Yisrael. Just read aloud and slowly massage and so forth. And this is how you get it in the subconscious mind of your child before the child is ever born. And now this is pretty factual. The world right now, well, first off, you could be putting your time to use with reading. If you keep something handy, if you got a few minutes, you're waiting on somebody to pick you up to go to work or go to class or something, why not open your book and store some things? And why not teach this? If you teach it to others, this is going to be a score for you, not against you. Just keep that in mind with everything you do. Start building up points with Yahweh. You'll love it. There you'll find your joy in Yahweh. The wars are building too. And that's all you can see on the news today. How the wars are building, how, all the nations are getting ready for war. All the nations know now that they're going to be involved in nuclear war. So they're trying their best to get enough bombs, enough destructive weapons ready to kill their enemy next door to keep him from killing them. The United States, if you saw that, they put up a defense system. It's not a defense, it's an attack system along the borders of Turkey. Now, they sold this to Turkey. And then here comes Russia, and they said, what if something occurs and you're not allies with the United States? You really need this defense system that we have to knock out that defense system that they sold you because they may use it against you, and it's only about 3 seconds away from the time they pull the trigger. That's how fast they are. That ship that Yahweh showed me over in a cloud over the sanctuary, they said a missile could reach the United States in 6 seconds. It's 6. That's hard to believe. It's 6 seconds. don't even give a person to think about what was told him. 6 seconds. And you'll be plowed 200 times, as one of the Iranian preachers said. Keep this in mind. Yeshua said, nation against nation, kingdom against kingdom. Keep that in mind on all the news, because that kingdom means religion. We're one. The house of Yahweh is a kingdom. We're training for the kingdom, and we're called to it by Yahweh. Well, Black Thunder, full moon, get ready for the massive energy shift on July 16th. Don't know yet what that might be, but if you hear about it, let me know. If you find anything on it, let me know. That was 13 pages of showing different countries. Iran launches strikes in Iraq and responds to Israel's threat as it vows to defend itself against any attack. This just shows the attitude right now that we're seeing among the nations. It's just an attitude of war, and they know they're coming to war, and they're telling the people, we've got weapons. Don't forget, we could wipe out your ships in the Strait of Hormuz. We could reach them in a few seconds and wipe them out, along with all your men and your guns and whatever else you got on that thing. North Korean ballistic missiles can now hit anywhere in the U.S. This is North Korea that's making this brag. Can now hit anywhere in the U.S. New military report confirms. Quite a lengthy article by David Brennan. Let's see, AMEDT, and this came out 7/12/2019. House passes, get this now, it's hard to believe. House passes $733 billion defense bill. House passes $733 billion defense bill, checking Trump's war powers. The House gave final approval Friday to a defense bill that would put a liberal stamp on military policy by shackling President Trump's ability to wage war in Iran and Yemen. The $733 billion National Defense Authorization Act was passed along stark party lines, 220 to 197. That's about a 6-page article. Russia says U.S. military lied about its missiles. You saw that live report a while ago, and plans to put new ones near border. Everybody out there is getting ready for this war. Jerusalem, the Jerusalem Post. The Jerusalem Post, Tehran threatens missile attack on Dimona nuclear power plant. The Ayatollah Muhammad Ali something or other, Khomeini, also warned the U.S. against a military attack on Iran. If Iran decides to confront you, a missile strike on the Dimona reactor A missile strike on the Demono reactor would be enough, said Tehran's Friday prayer. This is a prayer. In prayer. Let me read it again. If Iran decides to confront you, a missile strike on the Demana reactor would be enough, said Tehran's Friday prayer. Ayatollah Khomeini, Allah, in a sermon, this is a sermon. What did I tell you about religions? Kingdom against kingdom. That's religion against religion. That's what we're doing. If you remember Jeremiah, or maybe it was Isaiah, that said your gods are as many as your cities. And this is what's causing all the fights. Everyone is doing what their God tells them to do. And that's what Yeshua said. Satan is your teacher, and whatever she tells you to do, that's what you're going to do. That's Yochanan 8:44, I believe. Well, he said this in a sermon now. This was the religious leaders teaching this and saying that, brought this in a sermon, addressing the United States and Israel according to a report by Radio Forda. If you look at Matithia, well, you don't have to, you're familiar with it. But it says, nation against nation and kingdom against kingdom in this time period. And he said, this is the first half. That's the first half of the 7-year peace plan. Well, we've been in it now for 21 years later now. It was shut down, and 21 years later, revived and put back in action again. So we have the second half here that is getting ready, not for all these conventional wars that they've been having, but they're all getting ready for nuclear. Everybody talking nuclear. Khomeini threatened, now this is still in a sermon, Khomeini threatened that such an attack on the nuclear reactor in Israel's Negev desert would plow Israel 200 times. Would plow. This is like a big tractor now that you see pulled across the field, plowing it. This is the way he was describing it, but plowed up. They destroyed the temple and plowed the Temple Mount, so no one would ever know that a temple stood there. And it wasn't discovered for years and years later. That was 70 CE. 48, they started trying to rebuild. 1948. 70 AY is when they destroyed it, plowed it like a field. Well, that's what he's referring to here. It would plow Israel 200 times if we did this, he says. He's warning them in his sermon what is going to take place if they pick on Iran. You won't be able to fire a bullet at Iran, or you're going to be plowed 200 times. All of Israel. This is a nuclear reactor hit with a nuclear bomb, I suppose. You're living in a glass house, he said. You'd better watch out. Sometimes I don't know whether these guys are talking to their God or whether they're talking to their enemy. It could go both ways. He also warned the U.S. against a military attack on Iran, saying, think of an attack only if you want to change the color of the Persian Gulf waters from azure to red. From July the 7th, we will enrich uranium at any grade and form, and in any amount we may deem necessary. Well, that's their threat, of course, to the United States. U.S. to punish. The U.S. to punish. Now, you got to understand this and the prophecies that go with it. So listen carefully. U.S. right now, in the generation that we're speaking, the U.S. to punish anyone using EU's alternative payment system with Iran to skirt sanctions. Well, you know, the sanctions that Trump has put against Iran. So they're trying to find a way out. So it says Washington is ready to impose sanctions against the European Financial Settlement Index mechanism, which would allow trade to continue between EU and Iran. If you look back to Genesis 49, and we see this prophecy coming live now. Man, it's like watching television and seeing all this stuff come to pass right here in front of your eyes. This was written in 1689 BY. 1689. If you have a King James Version, just write that down. That's BY, that's before Yahshua. They changed it in the 1600s to AC and DC, I believe, something like that. After and before their gods that Constantine told them there's going to have to worship. We got the information, the history. That's what you need. The history of the Bible, and we got it for you. Be glad to send you a copy. First verse says, Then Jacob called for his sons and said, Gather together so I may tell you what will befall you in the last days. The last days, that's used by the prophet. In the last days, I will establish my house. So it's the same time period that Yahweh has his house going. The last generation, as Yahshua called it. I hope everyone sees that. I hope all you preachers out there are listening to me. And thanks for your letters. And yes, I'm willing to help. Help you come out of the mess you're in with the corporations. Last days, in the last days, Micaiah 4, 1 through 3, I will establish my house. I will promote the promotion, as you saw this morning in the mini Gematrix that was brought out. And then look on down now. This is going to take place in our generation, see? That's what he's telling you there. Our generation is the generation of the nuclear bomb. That's what the Savior said in Matthew 24:29, that they'll have bombs that can darken the sun. And that's this generation. He said, that generation will not pass away till you see all these things fulfilled. Speaking of the prophecies in the scriptures. And the things that many of the prophecies there that he named. Isaiah 24, 1 through 6, speaking of the same thing. The earth will be burned and few men left. Well, verse 8, Yada, your brothers will praise you. This is talking about religion, see? They're the leaders of religion. They praise you. That's religion. And that's what that he's trying to set in your mind here, that Yada is going to be running this thing. And then he spells it out a little more, and then Yahshua even more in the book of Revelations, which you have to go with book 1 of the book of Yisrayl before you can understand it. Verse 8, Yada, your brothers will praise you. Your hand will be on the neck of all of your enemies. What does that sound like? U.S. to punish using EU's alternative payment. He's speaking of nations here, brother. He's speaking of nations in Europe, all over the world. You go against this hurt not the oil system. This is a banking system set up to take care of money called petro money. It's called SWIFT. And it was so easy to get into. And you could get as much money as you wanted. And they coaxed the nations to get into it. Well, they're into it. Now they're wanting out of it. Many of them are wanting out of it. But he's to punish you. The U.S. to punish anyone who uses EU's alternative payment system with Iran to skirt the sanctions passed by the United States. So he's got his, whoever this is, whoever it is, I can tell you now it's a Catholic church. I can prove that too with Scripture, and got it lined up to do so. And the scepter will not depart from Yada. Let's go back to verse 9. You are a lion's cub, O Yada. You return from the prey. Lion, that's a symbol of the tribe of Yada also, and still is today. You return from the prey, my son, like a lion. He crouches, he lies down like a lion's breed. Who dares to rouse him? Well, they're finding that out with these sanctions here, right here. But with that in your mind right there, who dares to rouse him? Go back here to Revelation 6. Revelation 6. Now, these are the things that must come to pass in a short time. This was Revelations 1 shows that all these things in Revelations here are to come to pass in a short time, or shortened time. Shortened time. They're showing you what this shortened time is going to be. In chapter 6 now, chapter 6 and verse 6, he says, and I heard a voice in the midst of the four living creatures saying, a measure of wheat for a penny, and 3 measures of barley for a penny, and see you hurt not the oil. Hurt not the oil. So the U.S., if you change the wording there just a little, U.S. punishes anyone who hurts the oil. Hurt not the oil. This is the warning to all nations. And remember the hand on the neck of all the enemies. In this hurt not the system here. In Revelations 6:1, he says, and I saw when the Lamb opened one of the seals. These are the prophecies of Daniel. Seal up the prophecies, as Daniel wrote in chapter 12, verse 4, seal up the prophecies until the times, and the dividing of times. So they're sealed for this time period of Revelations, which must come to pass in a short time. And now we see it coming to pass. Washington is ready to impose sanctions against the European financial settlements, index, mechanism, which would allow trade to continue between the EU and Iran. U.S. special representatives to Iran warned on Thursday. The financial channel, which was announced by Germany, France, and the UK in January, is aimed to enable legitimate trade with Iran in the wake of U.S. sanctions against the Islamic Republic. That's the enemy, and Yada's got his Yada, the Catholic Church, the Vatican, who is leader of the kings of the earth, leader of the religions of the earth. All of them worship gods. Remember what Satan told you? Worship gods. Don't keep Yahweh's righteousness, worship God. Well, that's the Catholic Church. Of course, it's taught this from the beginning. Cain was the first pope. Bloomberg had reported earlier that the U.S. Treasury Department Undersecretary for Terrorism and the Financial Intelligence sent a letter on May 7th warning that Intex and anyone associated with it could be barred from the U.S. financial system if it goes into effect. So if they go against Yada, if they go against the Vatican, if they go against the two-horned beast that was set up by the Vatican, which is the United States. Think about it, brethren. The United States discovered 1492, right? Now, 1492, we had shiploads of people coming here to avoid persecution. Shiploads. It started populating really rapidly. Before and after they were coming here to avoid persecution. Before and after 1492. When this took place, when you win the war, you can write the history any way you want to write it. What took place is religions. Why only two religions? Think about this. Why? We had war after war after war. We had people being killed, and they blamed it on the Indians that was camped living off of the land, who really had no weapons to fight with, but they were killed off. And then, because of the uproar of killing all these people, they finally stopped it. Like Germany, they killed a certain amount and thought they had it done. But they were killing off anyone who was religious but not Catholic. Anyone who was religious but not Catholic or Christian. Catholic and Christian are the same thing. This is the two-horned beast that we see in Revelations 13. The two-horned beast. If you read the history of the United States and you keep this in mind, you will see that religions was wiped out. When they were finished with this thing, they had their own religion set up with hospitals, schools. Schools, that's where Catholicism is taught. You can't teach Yahwehism, but you can teach Catholicism. Catholicism is Easter, Halloween, and Sunday keeping, and Christmas. All the holidays is filled with lies. Filled with lies. Yes, they're all nothing but lies. Check it out. Easter goddess. Her rabbits laying eggs. Her children going and gathering the eggs. All of this is God worship, goddess worship. Christmas, they deck a tree, cut it out of the forest, Jeremiah 10. Cut it out of the forest. All of these things was put in the King James Version. They were there, but the King James Version did not come out until much later. Here in the United States, they started printing it here in the United States in 1782. 1782 was just before my dad and mother by 100 years. Just 100 years before my dad and mother were born. Now, they managed to keep this to where this thing was run by two religions. Well, you say, what about the Jews? Well, they killed only those who worshiped Yahweh. Most of the Jews do not worship Yahweh. Most Hebrew people worship gods. They're all Catholics. That's where Catholicism began, remember? With the 12 tribes of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. They're 12 sons. The 12 sons that came out of Egypt, they brought it with them. They brought Catholicism with them. They never let it go, even in the days of Samuel. Samuel, the 8th chapter, 1 through 4. So here you have now the United States. You have a two-horn religion, two religion state here in the United States. How do you think that was brought about? No Muslims wanted to come, huh? No, it was forced, and it was set up, and it was brought about by the Vatican, of course. And the armies knew what they were doing. And of course, when history comes, you'll see, if you start reading the histories, you will see signs of what I'm saying, and the people they killed, and they won't tell you why they killed them. You know, somebody came over there riding a horse and shot a bunch of our white people with a bow and arrow. So we had to go and wipe out that camp. It only amounted to a few thousand. It was worth it. It was a just war. Keep these things in mind. The scripture shows you exactly what took place. I'm going to show you, Yahweh willing, in the future sermons. But the Catholic Church was started in the beginning with Cain, who went to the land of Nod, or Node, N-O-D. Hopefully that'll be brought next Sabbath, if not very, very soon. And of course, the Catholic Church then spread and quickly engulfed the earth and thought they got rid of mankind. That's Satan. Satan is the head of the Catholic Church. Plainly shows you that in Revelation. It shows you that in Genesis 3, Genesis 4, that the Catholic Church belongs to Satan. The God worshippers, that's what they are. They call themselves universal. Universal, that's what they are. They actually brought that out in one of their sermons the other day, and I caught it. It was shown to me. But the Catholic Church started in the beginning. They brought the flood, but they didn't kill everybody. Abel started a work that was kept alive. Not much, but it was kept alive enough that it came on down through all of this. And one person, Moshe, there was some of the people that were sincere, not many. Yahweh told Moshe, you're not going to convert these people right now. They're not going to repent. He says that to us in Revelations also. They're not going to repent. They're a stiff-necked and rebellious people. Speaking of the ones that they call Christians right now, they're the yada that sits on the 7 hills of Rome. And all of that is shown in the scripture and given by Daniel in Daniel 7 that they come against Yahweh. Satan came against Yahweh, right? In Genesis 3, Satan came against Yahweh. Cain came against Yahweh. Cain and Abel was the first priest. Abel's people that he offered to Yahweh were acceptable. From that bloodline came Noah. From those genes came Noah. Cain's people that he offered to Yahweh, that was his offering. This can be figured out even from the King James Version if you take all the scriptures here a little and there a little. Yeshua himself said it. Remember this now. It'll help you in your studies. Yeshua himself said it. This is going to be done. So all the blood shed from who? Is going to be on your heads. Speaking of the Pharisees, Sadducees, Essenes, and Herodians, who destroyed the temple with the Roman army, moved to Rome in 70 AY, all the blood from righteous Abel, that takes you back to Cain, who killed him, who was a Catholic, who was universal, who Satan says it's better to worship the gods. You'll have more fun this way. Fill your time with stupidity now, and you're throwing away the best offer ever offered to mankind. And Yahweh's offering it again right now. He's saying, come. That's what Yeshua said in Revelations, the last chapter. Come to Yahweh's house. Seek for it. Seek his kingdom and his righteousness. Seek Yahweh's kingdom and his righteousness. Matthew 6:33. And then in Revelations, he says, come on, come on. It's blessed are those who keep his commandments. That's the King James Version. That's the last chapter in Revelations. In verse 14, blessed are those that keep his commandments, because they have right to this tree of life that he's offering again in these last days. In the last days, I will establish my house, the house of Abel, the house of Yahweh. That's any interlinear will show you that. So will Strong's. In the last days, I won't give it anymore. It's gone. But in the last days, I will establish it again. And it's being offered right now. That's the only time. Check me out. Search the scriptures. There you'll find that I'm spoken of. And this message that I'm bringing you, search the Gematria. And you'll find me there too. The house of Yahweh. You won't see Yeshua until you say, blessed is he who comes in the name of Yahweh. You run that through the Gematria. That was brought out the first thing with the great Kohan Benjamin Krause Hawkins this morning. Yahweh bless you, and I'll turn the services back to the next leader. I love you!
I hold in my hand 13 pages of countries that are contacting the house of Yahweh. They're reaching out to the house of Yahweh for more information and are realizing that the house of Yahweh is the only prophesied protected place on the face of the earth. And I want to take this moment right now to really encourage all of those people in those countries and all of the countries all over the world to make plans now to get to the house of Yahweh. In case the communications are shut off, which could be a very real possibility, you need to make plans to get to the only prophesied protected place on the face of the earth. We know that the trouble is coming. We know that the trouble is here. We know that the trouble is going to be increased. This is prophesied. The house of Yahweh is the only place, the only protected place to be. And please read Jeremiah 23, 3-8. I'm going to read verse 8 for you. But they will say, as surely as Yahweh lives, who brought up and led the seed of the house of Israel out of the protected place and from all countries where I had driven them, and they will dwell in their own land. The house of Yahweh in Abelin, Texas is the only prophesied place on the face of this earth. We need you to make plans to get there in case the communications is shut off. Start making your plans now, in case you cannot communicate with the house of Yahweh at that time. For more information, please call us, 1-800-613-9494. You can email us at info@yahweh.com. We're waiting for you to contact us now, and we'll see you when you get here.